Hey everybody. I kind of felt like I wanted to do a follow-up because, well, as you guys can see, I finished all of them. Every single one of these. Now, I will admit, there is a way you can kind of take care of more than one at the same time. So, for example, you can actually get two builds done in the same game if two powers happen to be part of two of the same builds. But this video is basically a follow-up to the previous videos I did. I felt like I could actually do a bit more of a follow-up and talk a bit more about some of these now that I've actually played a bit more of each of the different characters that are in Stadium. So, for example, what I'm talking about is if, let's say, this is also part of this build, and you happen to see, let's say, this was also a part of this build as well, actually, countermeasures. Nope, that's not part of it. But if countermeasures was here, and you picked both stat boost and countermeasures, it would count for you playing two of the example builds in one game. So that is a way that you can kind of speed through if you're actually trying to get some of these icons achieved. You can actually be able to go ahead and simply do it that way in order to be able to collect any of these that you want. Obviously, it's not going to work that way for every character. But now having played all of these, and as you can see, like this is like legit evidence and proof that I've actually done it. I feel like I can talk a bit better about some of these than I was able to before. So, like, we'll just go ahead and start with Diva, for example. I wasn't really fond of this build. It didn't really work out that well. I actually got name called by some of my teammates, and that is the risk of trying to acquire these icons. Sometimes you're going to be playing builds that you probably should not be playing because you're just trying to get the icon as opposed to actually trying to play the best possible build you can to win the game. You're still trying to win the game, obviously, and trying to somehow make up for it. Keep in mind, the items don't matter. These are not required. All that's required for you to get credit for the challenge is picking two powers from this build. Just two powers, that's it. As long as they are listed here, it counts. So if you're trying to do, say, the Toki Rush build, I would say just pick Toki Slam and Ignition Burst and you're fine. I also recommend Express Detonation because I think it's actually pretty good. I didn't even bother trying the Mecha Punch one. The idea of boosting and then meleeing to me just feels a little awkward for me. But believe it or not, this build I actually kind of enjoyed because of, well, hold on, I actually need to select it. I actually came up with my own version of this build, as you can see, called Nuke and Slam. But let's say you're like doing this and you're dropping lava everywhere, and then you press, whoops, I pressed the wrong button. Okay, so you do have to make sure that you're still boosting in the air. So this is one of the reasons why I actually recommend. And as you can see, yeah. But one of the things I actually recommend if you want to get this to work better is this right here, galvanized core, to make the boosters last longer. And also, the way this works is that it deals damage based on your maximum armor. So it's actually a good idea to go ahead and grab Vital ET to give yourself even more armor. Just anything that can buff up your armor. More armor. So if, let's say, you're relying on this, I would say go ahead and just grab some of these other things just to continue boosting your armor. Because the more armor you have, the more damage it will deal. Shields is not really important or big deal, but if you want to go ahead and get Crusader Hydraulics as well, like I'm looking for what else could give you armor here. Gloom Gauntlets, if you actually do want to go ahead and get the punch thing here, because of course Gloom Gauntlet does also contribute to that as well. But if, let's say, you're wanting to get you know, Crusader Hydraulics, which is also totally fine. Keep in mind, at this point, you already have over 1,000 health. Just about half of it, more than half of it, is armor. But let's say you do grab the punch power here. So then you have over 1,200. A lot of that is armor, okay? So now you can boost a whole lot more, dropping lava everywhere, and then... Okay, that was a bit of an awkward slam. Obviously, it's going to be a little weird, but... You see how much damage that did? You'd be surprised how much damage. And keep in mind, you're also dropping lava everywhere, and then... You know, practice range is going to be... Alright, let's try it over here, then. So you're not only dropping lava everywhere all over the enemies, but then you just slam right on top of their heads. These things are moving way too much!
You need aim training.
Obviously, this is part of the issue, is trying to make sure you get this to work. But you can see that's like a decent amount of damage right there, right? So you'd be surprised how effective I was able to make this build work. I was actually doing a decent amount of damage in this game where I was trying out this build, and I actually got a couple of kills here and there, like right there, with this. And then, of course...
Nerf this.
Hold on, that's right. I just remembered. I don't have the... Hold on. So, what I also recommend, this is why I came up with this build here, to also recommend doing other things for, like, if you're able... I do recommend also amp up, or APM up. APM amp, excuse me. Just the idea that when you're using your boosters, because you're going to be doing it a lot, you're going to give your allies some more movement speed. But obviously, the detonator here is also pretty important as well.
Gotcha, gotcha. Back in action.
Because as I was saying, when you have the detonator power...
Nerf this.
You can see the difference there in terms of the destruction range and damage.
Booting up.
And it used to be 200%.
Miss me?
That's how, like, if you see the highlight I posted on my channel of me getting that big 5-man kill nuke, it's because it was 200%, not 100%, like it is now.
Nerf this.
So yeah, being able to have that. So this is a build that this is why I kind of came up with this build here, which you can kind of like modify as you go along. Where when you use self-destruct, you're also going to drop some more lava, but it's optional, honestly. Like, these are just here. Like, don't mind the early game stuff, but basically, like, you have these things here. I don't recommend getting Mecha Punch, honestly. I would actually honestly recommend instead getting Party Protector. So when you use self-destruct, you're also giving your allies overhealth, which, because of this right here, the radius is 100% larger. So you're more likely to hit your allies with the overhealth with this, you know, if you have that ability there. So it actually makes this more relevant. So anyways. But then, yeah, more stuff to give yourself more health, more armor. And then the idea is that, as I was doing by round 5 and 6, is I'm just flying around, dropping lava everywhere on the enemy team, and also doing the big slam for extra damage and such. So, I actually ended up liking this build. Amongst all the D.Va builds, this one actually ended up being my favorite. This one did not work out for me very well. But, of course, keep in mind there are a number of counters for this. But yeah, I actually ended up liking the Toki Slam build a bit more than I thought I would. Unfortunately, Junker Queen and her other builds, I feel like they really hurt Junker Queen recently. She does not feel nearly as strong as she did before. I would say, if you want, you could still try and go for the Carnage and Shout build stuff, but it just doesn't feel as strong as it did before. It's definitely not nearly as strong. Now, Orisa. This surprised me. So, I wasn't really too fond of the spin to win build. This was, I mean, unless you're dealing with specific team composition on the enemy side, I probably would not recommend this. Fortified Colossus is still, a Fortify build is still a really good build, especially against certain enemies like a Reinhardt. I would personally know that as a Rein main. The one that surprised me, though, was Overclocked Guardian. I did not really expect this build to be that good. At least when I played it, it felt good. It felt better than I thought it would. Basically, you get Shield Divergence, which deploys the barrier if you overheat. But here's the one that surprised me how good it was. Scorched Earth. When you overheat, you apply burning damage to enemies within 6 meters, dealing damage equal to 20% of your maximum life over 4 seconds. What's key for this is attack speed and this right here. Recover from overheated 50% faster. I was stunned at how much damage I was putting out as Orisa with this build. When you're doing, up your attack speed and you're constantly overheating, you're not only putting out an extra barrier, which is not always going to be helpful because of where it ends up being fired off, but Scorched Earth, I was so surprised at how effective this was. It actually ended up doing a good amount of damage, and I was just so surprised by that. So, yeah, I would say go ahead and try an overheat build for Orisa. It's actually surprisingly effective. I already talked extensively about Reinhardt. I don't really feel like I need to do that again. When it comes to Sigma, unfortunately I had I can see the appeal of Orbital Bombardment if you're good at hitting them, which I'm not really great at. But I don't think it's bad or anything. Honestly, also the spheres can also do some pretty good damage, although I don't really see the appeal of zero gravity, honestly. But being able to, say, this is kind of why I came up with this kind of build myself, which is I think Orbital Barrier and the Fortitude, where your barrier just is bigger and constantly regens, are both really, really good, absolute must-haves. I like the Trinisphere, where you get 3 of those. And this is also really good as well, where you get Connect Grasp and it restores the barrier's health as well. And then being able to grab some other things, such as being able to have the Connect Grasp duration last longer, have the barrier heal your nearby allies, which also includes the one that circles you. So, that was kind of the build that I kind of gravitated towards. Again, I'm not using gravity as a pun because I'm playing highlighting Sigma right now. But I would say, if you want, go ahead and grab a bit of each of them. If you want to, say, replace this with one of the other ones that focuses on accretion and ability power, I would say go ahead and go for that. But I think they're all fine, honestly. It just may end up having not so great matchups. And also how you're going to play Sigma, obviously, is also going to be rather important as well, since, yeah, he's a poke tank, but there are going to be times your team is going to need you to push forward, and whether or not you're able to do, I know that Sigma is not necessarily all that great about doing that compared to, say, Reinhardt, but sometimes that's what your team needs. Zarya, I will say there was one build, neither of these here worked out for me, even though I thought the Projected Barrier one would, but it actually didn't work out that well for me. But what surprised me, though, the one I actually liked, was the ability power one, focusing on the barrier, doing knockback and extra damage. And this one, Volskaya Vortex. I was surprised at how good this was. You basically pop barrier to give yourself extra knockback damage, and then you do that. And look at that extra damage it's doing. Not to mention the knockback and, the CC and such it's doing. It was actually surprisingly effective. So, if you want, I would say go ahead and go for that ability power type of build. This is where I kind of tried to come up with this, where I have these, and then stuff to continue buffing up the barriers. I like Life Lift, where it just makes the bubble much bigger. And the idea that also it's going to heal and give movement speed, and this applies to your own barrier as well as your allies' barrier. So that's kind of what I was coming up with. I tried the Viper build for Ashe. As you can understand and guess, I didn't have that much success with it, since I'm not really that great at aiming. My go-to build for Ashe is still going to focus on Dynamite and, I guess, Bob as well. But mainly Dynamite ability power with a bit of Coach Gun in there as well, especially if you take the one where Coach Gun applies burning. So, as you can imagine, also, Cast didn't work out so well for me. I actually did get a win with the Keep Rolling build, which was, like, allowed me to definitely be a little bit more survivable. Unfortunately, the Gunslinger one didn't work out well for me because I had this Reaper constantly getting in my face, so I wasn't able to really do much in that game to the point where I actually got very frustrated. And as you can imagine, the What Time Is It build didn't work out for me as well because it was a game against the D.Va. The only, like, elimination or kill, quote-unquote, that I got with this every time I ulted in that game was against the D.Va's mech. When I felt that her defense matrix ran out. Yeah, I don't recommend the ult build, especially if they have certain things to counter it, like a D.Va. Now, Freya. Freya surprised me at how, like some of these builds were. So, Stormbringer I liked because, for one thing, it does this.
Easy enough.
So, the main thing it does... Alright, hold on. Because it's... I thought it was going to say what it was here. Okay, so after using Updraft... So yeah, you can see right there.
We're the best.
So then you will have to wait for the cooldown to come off if you want to do it again. But yeah, having that extra mini bola, pretty nice. And then the damaging zone deals more damage and lingers for 2 more seconds. And the eliminations count towards bounty hunting. Updraft will launch it at your crosshair. So when you updraft, you just get a free shot. So yeah, focusing on ability power with this build, I was like, huh, this is actually like, especially if you are able to really work on your take aim. Now I will say also, that's also going to be the case with this one here as well, with Hired Assassin. Because whenever your take aim sticks, it fires additional shots at them. Its explosion radius is increased. It pierces, and you take a free shot with your crosshair, at your crosshair. So yeah, if you're wanting to focus on take aim, this is actually pretty good. Once you learn about how it works, where you know every time you use your dash, it resets the ability to take aim without having to reload. All of a sudden, you can actually do pretty well, especially if you're able to land all your take aims really well. And then I'm not even going to try to pronounce this. By the way, I apologize if in the previous video I said that I thought she was Dutch. I think she's actually Danish. I'm not entirely sure about that. Again, I'm not that knowledgeable when it comes to European dialects. I apologize. This one focused not on her take aim, but just her regular crossbow. Every 5th crossbow shot fires an additional 2 bolts in a spread that deals reduced damage. After you use Quick Dash, the crossbow hits heal you, and after you use an ability, you restore your max ammo. So then you are just constantly doing this, which does a lot, as you can see, with and you're probably going to want to go ahead and also take items that, as it recommends, that increase your maximum ammo, such as Commander's Clip. The idea, of course, that the more ammo she has, the more she's just going to be spamming them like crazy. And, of course, if you are able to, say, take a bunch more attack speed, well then... So yeah, it's a lot of spam damage. This was pretty good. So I would say there's no shock or like surprise here as to why Freya is considered really good in Stadium, because some of these builds, depending on what you want to focus on, I would say this might possibly be the weaker one, unless you do want to try and have the extra bola shot here, which also, keep in mind, it also buffs, the ult. So, yeah. So you're dealing nice AoE damage. But honestly, if you're either good at doing your take aim, definitely grab that. If you just want to spam your crossbow, go with this one here, because they were pretty effective, especially if you then take other things such as being able to, melt armor or melt barriers. This is why she is so frustrating to play against as Reinhardt, because she can get all these things that just melt your shield and then melt your health bar. So, yeah, Freya is really good. All three of the builds I tried, I liked. Here's the funny one. I actually won all three of my games as Genji, trying out each of these builds. Even the Blade one, which is definitely the quick melee build. Also, apparently, Gloom Gauntlet is recommended for this. I wasn't sure if Gloom Gauntlet actually counts for the quick melee, but I guess it is. So apparently Gloom Gauntlet is also recommended for this. I actually didn't end up using that one because this was also highly recommending getting stuff for your Dragon Blade as well, since your melee damage is apparently also translated over to your Dragon Blade, apparently. But as you can see here, Dragon Blade is listed as melee damage. So it's also recommended to get Ambusher Optics, but keep in mind you're supposed to get behind your enemies and then quick melee them. I've encountered some Genjis running this build, and I understand why now. So yeah, I was able to actually do pretty well with that. This one I didn't realize how effective it was going to be. The Shuriken build. You are firing a ton of Shurikens with this build. Absolutely a ton of them. It was actually kind of nuts how many Shurikens I was tossing out. And then this one may have been my favorite, the Swift Strike build with ability power. Partly because this was one of my favorite powers right here. Swift Strike deals additional damage over 3 seconds. So when you dashed in, you're causing bleeding damage, and then of course if it resets, you can do it again. Yeah, I was really, really liking it. And then of course you can get, this is one of the best power items for a clean sweep, where you're not only getting more ability power, more ability lifesteal, but it also makes the Swift Strike wider so you can hit more of them. Keep in mind, people may catch on to this, and if they have a Junkrat, he may put a trap in front of you, which is what happened to me. But yeah, I was actually really happy that I won all three of my games as Genji. Partly because, well, I get to show off my Illidan skin, which everybody loves, and it says like one of the rarest skins in the entire game. So anytime I have a chance to show off this skin and actually play decently as Genji, which I never do in the base game, but apparently I can be rather decent at him in Stadium, I guess. Speaking of Junkrat, I think the one I actually ended up liking the most may have been the Grenade Frag Launcher build. But not that much. If I'll be honest, I didn't like any of these builds. There's not enough to me to really say go ahead and do a trap build. I mean, unless you're certain you can make it work with these things here. Being able to also have some of these traps not only have more health, reduce cooldown, but also deal extra damage. You could probably make it work. The mine one was funny because you have this thing where you launch yourself and then when you land somewhere, you detonate another. So you can just keep on hopping and hopping and hopping. It's actually lets you cover lots of ground. It's actually quite funny. And keep in mind, if you land where somebody is, they also get hit by the mine, so that's some extra damage for you there. Also, when you do that, you're also able to have it where it just keeps dropping extra Total Mayhem bombs. And of course, you can have it drop a whole lot more Total Mayhem bombs. I believe there's something here that lets you be able to just drop extra Total Mayhem bombs. Well, if it's not, but yeah, unfortunately, I'm not too fond of any of Junkrat's builds. Mei. This was like my least favorite of these builds because it recommends you using your secondary fire, which I didn't like. The one I liked the most, obviously, was probably this one because this focuses just on the primary fire, which also gives you extra armor. Yeah, I actually ended up just liking the primary fire one. And then, of course, there's this one here, which everyone also says is really strong right now. In fact, I think it got buffed, which focuses on ability power. You're constantly putting out blizzards with your ice walls and your cryo freeze, which also includes your boulders, so you can just keep rolling around in a boulder while doing a mini blizzard around yourself. It does, when it ends, it does extra knockback damage, and you can have it last even longer. And you can have blizzard deal more damage, which includes the mini blizzards you're putting out. Yeah, this is probably like definitely the best one to run as Mei if you want to play some Mei. Reaper. So here's the funny thing. As much as I like the idea of a tanky Reaper, and it can do well, because I know some people that said they ran to this extremely tanky Reaper and they just couldn't kill him because he just wouldn't die. A Wraith form one, it can, I guess, work. It's probably not necessarily recommended. I think the one that everyone recommends is what focuses on the shotgun and weapon power, especially with Revolving Ruin, because you can just have it do a ton of damage up close. Believe it or not, the one I actually found the most success with, you're not going to believe this, is this one. The ability power Death Blossom build. Now, I will say the reason I got this to work was because they didn't necessarily have any hard counters to it, like a Genji or an Orisa who could straight up deflect it, or a Sigma who could absorb it. They didn't really have any counters to Death Blossom in the comp that I ran this with. But believe it or not, by round 6, I was just able, because I had Death Step, I had Strangle Step, and I had Spirited to Slay by that point, which was basically allowing me, and I probably, instead of getting Wraith Renewal, I probably would have gotten Silent as the Grave, so they couldn't even hear my Shadow Step, so I can catch them by surprising more. But when I had all these Death Blossom things, I was actually just Death Blossoming everywhere, and because I had lots of ability power, I was doing a ton of damage in lifesteal. So believe it or not, I actually ended up having the most success with this Reaper build. I know this is the one that everyone trashes on, but believe it or not, there is an appeal to it if you can get it to work, and if you can see that they don't have any legit counters to your Death Blossom, you can actually make it work. You just also have to make sure that you are being very cautious and smart when you are using your Shadow Step, because if you're going to be Shadow Stepping right where they are, you better make sure you are doing it right. And obviously, you also need to make sure that the game lasts long enough to be able to have enough of these things to make it work. Like I said, I would instead recommend don't get Wraith Renewal, but rather instead, since you're going to be Shadow Stepping everywhere, doing your Death Blossoms, go ahead and also get Silent as the Grave, so that way they can not hear it. You know, being able to also make Reaper quieter because his footsteps are so loud, they're going to be getting you, they're catching you. Trying to come up on them pretty often. But yeah, believe it or not, I actually ended up finding the most success with that particular build. Now, Soldier, I actually had success with all 3 of his builds. And by the way, Chain Gun is back. It is finally back. It was removed from the game for a bit. They brought it back. I think it got nerfed because it looks like it's 0.4 weapon power, I guess. But as you can imagine, by late game, when you're able to have it where the tactical visor, it can do a lot. Dr. 76 is funny because you're able to just biotic field and move around with it a lot, doing extra healing, not to mention also doing extra damage when they try to come at you. They're getting extra damage on them. It's really funny. And then, of course, one of the best ones, Rocketeer, being able to Helix Rocket. You can basically one-shot people with this combo. Double Helix and Cratered, you can basically one-shot some people. And then, of course, you do this, you get some extra healing out. And, yeah, high ability power in Rocketeer. As you can imagine, Soldier, each of his builds are pretty good. Now we move to the supports. So this is usually the one that a lot of people like to take, on, where you're just doing an unscoped build, which can also be pretty effective as well, with more ammo and just spamming your shots into your enemy without scoping. Obviously, it's also going to depend on like some other stuff that you want to try and land. Veteran Sniper is if you're going to be wanting to focus on your scope shots, and it looks like it also wants you to focus on your nano boost as well. And, you know, I do like the idea of like really buffing up those nano boosts as well. And then you have the ability power build, which focuses on sleep and your grenades. And of course, as you can see, there's quite a few things to buff up your grenades. I also recommend that if you are wanting to focus on your sleeps as well, to not necessarily just get also lethal dose, but to also get tranquilizer, because it's going to make you hitting your sleeps a whole lot easier. At least that's how it felt to me. For someone who has difficulty landing my sleeps, it was actually pretty effective. Like, once I got that, all of a sudden I was landing a lot more on my sleeps. Juno. Boy, they have really hurt Juno. The torpedo build is... yeah, it's not what it used to be. Now, Surgical Astronaut is funny because this is a weapon power one, which lets you be able to critically hit both allies and enemies, and lets you focuses on your hyper ring, which is nice, but apparently it also got nerfed where I think it used to do 200 over health, now it does only 100 over health. So, the funny one to me, though, is aggressive gliding. This is the one that's rather funny because you are glide boosting all the time. When I say all the time, let me show you what I mean. Okay, hold on. I need a certain item to really showcase this. Let me see. There's a specific item. Ah, here we go. The moment the duration ends, the cooldown is over, so you can just go ahead and keep on gliding over and over. You are constantly in the air. You could spam shift. As you can probably hear me now, I'm spamming shift, and I'm just staying in the air all the time. So if you do this, it's also recommended to do things such as when you're airborne, you deal more damage. There's some other things to help that out as well. Being able to deal extra damage and healing to targets farther than 12 meters away. While you are using your glide boost, you gain extra attack speed. Oh, by the way, you can also get Stinger, which also does a bit of extra damage over time. So, yeah, that one I thought was rather fun and amusing to play. So, that may actually be the new go-to build for Juno if you actually want to go ahead and keep focusing on staying in the air. Kiri. I want to make sure everyone understands this. Clone is nerfed hard. They nerfed it into the ground. It's now just 2.5 seconds. It used to be 5 seconds. Don't bother going with the clone anymore. The clone is not worth it. I want to make that perfectly clear to all Kiriko players. Do not bother taking the clone anymore. It's nowhere near as effective as what it used to be. I do recommend the Shrine Maiden build, though, which is basically a Healing Ofuda build. But rather than the clone, what I would actually recommend instead is probably... I still recommend these three, but I think probably Fleetfoot might actually be a little bit better. And the reason for that is because if you want, though honestly I would actually recommend it with this build instead, Fox Power, which I really liked, because not only are you getting the extra charge of Suzu, but you're also buffing your Kitsune Rush. But this is another one right here. Why? Swift Step heals nearby allies over 2 seconds. There's also one here that allows you to gain over health for yourself every time you Swift Step. So you are constantly Swift Stepping. And that's why this used to be good with Shrine Maiden, because you were also constantly putting out your clone. Your clone was constantly up every time you Swift Stepped. So you're not only doing tons of extra health with your Swift Step, but you're also spawning the clone. But unfortunately, that's just not what it used to be anymore. But you'd be surprised how effective like this one can be as well, because not only you're getting stuff to buff up the duration of your Kitsune Rush, but then you also can get things like Our Bikes, which heals your allies every second that they are being affected by Kitsune Rush. Not to mention, you can also get things to really buff up your Suzu, such as being able to grant them extra movement speed and attack speed for 4 seconds, and being able to grant extra overhealth to your allies. So Kiriko is still good. I just would not necessarily recommend getting the clone anymore, since it's nowhere near what it used to be. Lucio. So I still enjoy very much the Amp It Up Audio Medic build, but I will say this. I didn't really enjoy the Speed Demon build, personally. But what I did enjoy was the Super Booper build. Believe it or not, I actually had a decent amount of success. I actually won doing this build here, where it has increased knockback, it deals extra damage if they hit a wall, and every time you use it, you're also healing your allies that are affected by your crosswave, and it's also doubled when your Amp It Up is active. So I actually was doing a decent amount of healing, even though it was focusing on Soundwave. So this actually, I thought, was pretty good. Mercy. So I'm sure, like, I even was telling some other Mercy players about this. If you know you're going to have a good pocket, like a Soldier or an Ashe, someone that you know can really benefit from your pocket, this can actually be pretty helpful and effective. Now, keep in mind, when I'm talking about this, don't take what I'm saying here when it comes to Mercy, because I know there's a lot of Mercy mains out there that are probably going to disagree with me on this, and that's fine. Listen to them. Don't listen to me if you want their advice and wisdom, since they play Mercy a lot more than I do. I've played her for like maybe 80 hours or so in this game, but I'm nowhere near as much of a Mercy player as some other people I know personally. But I found being able to give my allies lifesteal as well as damage reduction if their life was up, being able to also heal them when I use Guardian Angel. I think there's some other things as well here if you really want to buff up as well. Being able to heal them and give them overhealth. And it also chains. So, of course, Threads of Fate is also pretty good. But, yeah, stuff to, like, buff up being, you know, the pocket for some of your really good damage dealers. It's actually not bad. The Guardian one, I mean, if you're wanting to just kind of, like, Guardian Angel everywhere, where when your Guardian Angel ends, it heals them. When, you know, being able to heal them for more if they're below 50% health. I don't think, I mean, there's stuff here to make it more effective. It could be helpful and effective, but honestly, I don't think it's necessarily, like, a great recommended build. Angelic Healer with Threads of Fate and Triage Unit Serenity. Yeah, it's going to be pretty decent. Obviously, I'm sure some other Mercies have come up with some much better builds just from a combination and stuff. I still enjoy things like the this one here, where, you know, the way it uses your staff automatically when you pop Valkyrie. A lot of Mercy players take that, and with good reason. Being able to have it for 5 seconds. I think it used to be 6 seconds. For 5 seconds when you resurrect. And then, of course, Battle Medic, if you want to pull out the Glock and just go ham when you pop it, you know, pop your Valkyrie. That's always fun. But yeah. Moira, as someone who has played a lot of Moira and considers her my main healer, I still, of course, love the Orb Doctor build, where you're just constantly putting out tons of orbs. The Hybrid Infuser is rather interesting. It's kind of a combination of both, where you're also doing more healing from your Biotic Grasp, as well as being able to do a bit more damage if you want to do kind of a combination of both. And then, of course, if you're wanting to be the DPS Moira, who dives the back line and kills the entire back line, you can get things like Deconstruction, where you deal more damage. Your Grasp chains. When you're aiming at an enemy's head, you only gain movement speed, lifesteal, but you also restore more energy. Don't necessarily get more damage, but you can get things such as this, where the range on your Biotic Grasp is longer, and if you buff up your weapon power a lot, it's going to be doing a lot more damage. So, obviously, it's going to be based on what you want to do. And then, last but not least, Zenyatta. This was a weird one for me. So, like, this one, Obliteration, being able to, like, they get healed from the damage you deal. So, if you do want to be a damage-dealing Zenyatta, you could do this while also being able to heal your allies at the same time from the damage you deal. the Iris Consumes, where you basically are buffing your Discord Orb's damage through ability power, because every time it applies, it does damage over time. Whenever you Transcendence, you can be able to apply Discord Orbs. I believe I showed this off already. And then being able to have some other things, such as being able to have Line of Sight, last longer for your Harmony Orb, have 2 of them, have 1 on yourself. But that's also if you're wanting to go with the Golden Monk build, where you're going to be focusing on arming yourself up and then fly kick your enemies. You give yourself Inner Peace, and then you can just kind of go to town on people, and you put Discord Orb on an enemy that's trying to damage you. You get some of that damage back over 2 seconds, and you're just fly kicking everybody. It's rather amusing. But yeah. So just wanted to go ahead and have that moment to show off that I actually completed all the challenges, got all the icons. Some of the builds surprised me. I didn't actually know I was going to like or enjoy, and some of which I was like, yeah, I'm glad I got that over with, and I'm probably never going to play that again. You know, that's just how it is. This is why Blizzard needs to get the quick match casual version of Stadium out sooner than later, because people are complaining that people are quote-unquote throwing games because they are trying to complete these challenges by doing these builds that some of which are just bad. And sometimes you may win with those builds, but it may not be because of your build. It may be because of other things that happen in that game. But I've heard some people complain that games Steam right now are not great because people are trying to complete these challenges and get these icons, and because of that, they are not playing great builds. Blizzard, if you are wanting to put out challenges like this where people just to complete games with some of these builds, don't make them have to do it in ranked competitive games, because then you're going to have them grieving their teammates and costing them rank, and no one wants that. Nobody wants that. So why would you promote that when the only way to do this challenge is in a ranked version of this mode, because it's the only one that's available in the game? I know you saying that the quick match version of it is on its way, and it's also going to have crossplay, and I think that's great. But it should have been here at launch, because people are just wanting to try stuff out and try out builds before they actually try it in a ranked version. That is why people have this right here. They can go to unranked and try out characters here without having to, worry about costing people ranked, because it's just quick play. It's just unranked quick play. Who cares? Unfortunately, some people do, but that's besides the point. Then you go to competitive once you have a better understanding of them or a better grasp and actually want to try them out and play them in a competitive environment. You don't just have one version of this, where then people are going to feel like you are trolling. Sorry, I just had to get that rant out, because I know I'm not the only one that feels that way. So anyways, yep, I got it done. I got all these icons. As you can see, I'm already rocking one of them with the Reinhardt one, obviously. So, yeah. I don't know how many people are actually going to bother doing all these. I think some people are not even going to bother dealing with it or doing it, but I don't know. It depends how much you actually want some of these icons. So, anyways, I'll see you guys next time.